This is the Reverend Heidi Havercamp.
Good morning.
She is the vicar and soon to be the rector in Bolingbook, because they're becoming a parish instead of a mission, which is good news for everybody except for those of us who like the title vicar better than rector, because it sounds so Narnia-like. She is a native of Hyde Park, and Peter says she was smart, so if you trust Peter, she's smart.
Good morning. This is my book, and part of why I'm here today. Just gonna pull it. Some of you have already bought it. It's for sale at the cashier in the other room. This is the book that I wrote about, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I guess I just want to start by.
It's $12 a copy, so.
Oh, it's $12 a copy, cash or check. I just want to start by asking if we can go around the room, and I would love to hear your names. I'd love to hear if you've read this book before, and if you haven't, that is okay. And how long ago maybe that was. Was that when you were a child? Did you read it to your children? Maybe you read it in college. And may I start at the back with this lovely lady?
My name's Diane Shelda, and I read the book, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago with the confirmation class here.
Awesome. Oh, that's neat. Okay. Would you go next? I just share your name.
Just go,
Barb.
what, the Lion, the Witch, long time ago. I'm still catching up.
So I guess it's me, Dana McPhail. I read it probably in like the whole series in 7th grade, but we've been rewatching the movies with our 10-year-old.
Awesome.
He hasn't read it, but he's going to be reading it. He doesn't know that yet.
Got it. Okay.
Amy, I also read the first book in junior high school, and we're reintroducing it to our 10-year-old who's watching the movie.
This is mesmerized, sorry.
It's pretty mesmerizing.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, that's what the movie is.
I'm Amy, and I read it like everybody, probably in school, and then my son rediscovered it, and I read them again with him, and I didn't even know that there are 8 volumes or 6 volumes.
7, yeah.
Yeah, 7. I didn't even know that. So, yes.
I'm neither a rector nor a vicar. I read it, I think, the first time probably my sophomore year in college when I went on a big inkling reading kick. And loved it since.
I'm Michael. I read it in grade school.
Carol, I read it in grade school and read it with my own children, and now I'm looking forward to reading it with my grandchildren.
I'm Erin. I've never read the book. I've read the abbreviated version to my children and watched the movie with them many times, but I think I have my next book series lined up now.
I'm Linda, and I'm even worse than that.
No idea. Well, good. Well, I'm glad to have someone who's totally new to the series.
Mike, I too have not read it or seen the movie.
And I'm Judy, and I too read it a long time ago.
Yeah.
About the same time.
I'm Anne. I read the book, saw the movie, and one of the schools that my children attended in Wilmette put on the production. My son was the little boy in this story.
Really? The bad little boy.
The good.
The good boy. Peter.
I'm Betty James, and I have read through the books. They're wonderful.
Yeah, aren't they? Yeah.
I'm Elaine Brown. I am 98 years old, and I don't remember.
We'll take it. What about over here?
I've read all the books, I've seen all the movies, and I love it.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Just your name, and if you've read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and how long ago that might have been.
Tori Foster, I'm the senior warden. Yes, I read it, but many moons ago. Probably the movie's fresher in my mind.
Totally. Well, C.S. Lewis didn't write these books until he was in his 50s, which is kind of amazing that he could write these books for children, which are so rich and so moving at that time in his life. And of course, he was He was an atheist and agnostic for many years until he had a conversion experience and became just a really prolific Christian writer. The neat thing about his novels, these children's novels, are that he didn't really plan to write them. They sort of came to him. He had this vision, just sort of, I mean, it wasn't sort of a hallucination, but he just kept seeing this image in his head of this little fawn, which became Mr. Tumnus, with this armful of packages in a snowy wood with a lamppost. He just kept seeing that picture in his head. And then he started seeing this queen in a sleigh. And he just sort of sat down and started writing, and this is a story that just kind of came to him. So, and all that to say that these books can be read completely as adventure series. They do have Christian undertones, but he also wrote them to stand on their own. So I actually met a few people who read them never realizing that Christian theology is sort of their foundation. So that also means that I think when we read them with children or even ourselves, we kind of have to scratch a little bit to say, okay, like, where do I see Christ in this book? How do I see grace? How do I see forgiveness and love and trust? I think for adults, Aslan is a little more of an obvious Christ figure. He does give his life at the end of towards the end of the book. Spoiler, he dies. But it will help you. It will help you read it as a Christian allegory, I think, to just sort of know that, because then you see his actions and you can kind of resonate with that. The book that I wrote, since it's about Advent, doesn't actually deal with Aslan's death, because that's more of the Holy Week part of the book. But the first half of the book is all about sort of discovering this world, kind of discovering creation, and waiting for Aslan to come. Right, which is like waiting for Christ to appear. And I just want to start by just drawing you into the book, and I'm just going to read to you a little bit. And I invite you to sort of let the words wash over you, to let C.S. Lewis's beautiful details just kind of fill your mind. And I also invite you to listen and see what parts of Advent, what themes of Advent you hear in the story that he's starting to tell. So we're entering the story. The children have been moved to the countryside from London. It's taking place during the Second World War, when, of course, the Germans were bombing London. And so many children were sent out into the countryside for safety. And so the 4 Pevensey children are sent to this big, huge manor house. It's like a child's dream, right? This big, empty house. And there are 2 adults who are taking care of them, but they're not really around very much, and so they're just having a great time, a little bored too, but they're playing hide and seek. And this is Lucy, who stumbled on this big wardrobe in an empty room. This must be simply an enormous wardrobe, thought Lucy, going still further in and pushing the soft folds of the coats aside to make room for her. Then she noticed there was something crunching under her feet. I wonder, is that more mothballs, she thought, stooping down to feel it with her hand. But instead of feeling the hard, smooth wood of the floor of the wardrobe, she felt something soft and powdery and extremely cold. This is very queer, she said, and went on a step or 2 further. Next moment she found that what was rubbing against her face and hands was no longer soft fur, but something hard and rough and even prickly. Why, it's just like the branches of trees, exclaimed Lucy. And then she saw that there was a light ahead of her, not a few inches away where the back of the wardrobe ought to have been, but a long way off. Something cold and soft was falling on her. A moment later she found she was standing in the middle of a wood at nighttime, with snow under her feet and snowflakes falling through the air. Lucy felt a little frightened, but she felt very inquisitive and excited as well. She looked back over her shoulder, and there, between the dark tree trunks, she could still see the open doorway of the wardrobe, and even a glimpse of the empty room from which she'd set out. She had, of course, left the door open, for she knew that it is a very silly thing to shut oneself in a wardrobe. It seemed to be still daylight back there. I can always get back if something goes wrong, thought Lucy. So she began to walk forward, crunch, crunch over the snow, and through the wood toward the other light. In about 10 minutes, she reached it and found it was a lamppost. As she stood looking at it, wondering why there was a lamppost in the middle of a wood, and wondering what to do next, she heard a pitter-patter of feet coming toward her. And soon after that, a very strange person stepped out from among the trees into the light of the lamppost. He was only a little taller than Lucy herself, and he carried over his head an umbrella white with snow. From the waist upward, he was like a man, but his legs were shaped like a goat's. The hair on them was glossy black, and instead of feet, he had goat's hoofs. He also had a tail, but Lucy did not notice this at first, because it was neatly caught up over the arm that held the umbrella so as to keep it from trailing in the snow. He had a red woolen muffler around his neck, and his skin was rather reddish too. He had a strange but pleasant little face, with a short pointed beard and curly hair, and out of the hair there stuck 2 horns, one on each side of his forehead. One of his hands, as I have said, held the umbrella, and the other arm he carried several brown paper parcels. What with the parcels and the snow, it looked just as if he'd been doing his Christmas shopping. He was a fawn, and when he saw Lucy, he gave such a start of surprise that he dropped all the parcels. "Goodness gracious me," said the fawn. "Good evening," said Lucy. But the fawn was so busy picking up its parcels that at first it did not reply. When it had finished, it made her a little bow. Good evening," said the fawn. "Excuse me, I don't want to be inquisitive, but should I be right in thinking that you are a daughter of Eve?" "My name's Lucy," she said, not quite understanding him. "But you are, forgive me, you are what they call a girl?" asked the fawn. "Of course I'm a girl," said Lucy. "You are in fact human." "Of course I'm human," said Lucy, still a little puzzled. To be sure, said the fawn. "How stupid of me. But I've never seen a son of Adam or a daughter of Eve before." "I am delighted, that is to say," and then it stopped as if it had been going to say something it had not intended, but had remembered in time. Delighted, it went on. "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tumnus." "I am very pleased to meet you, Mr. Tumnus," said Lucy. So, what sticks out to you from that little piece in the beginning of Lewis's story? What especially struck you? What did you like?
It was so charming and so open.
Yeah. What was charming about it?
The innocence.
The innocence. What else did you like? Or were there things that you didn't like about it? It's okay to share those too.
I liked especially the theory that he called Lucy, daughter of Eve. That was really fascinating that he would use those words.
Yes.
I liked that. A real grabber for me.
Yeah, daughter of Eve.
I wasn't expecting the horns. Red horns. I was like, oh, it's the devil.
That's so common for us to, with goat legs and the horns. Yeah. Makes you feel a little suspicious of this guy in the woods. Yeah. What about,
Lucy didn't seem afraid. She was in this unusual new place and was seemed very comfortable.
Yeah. What did you think about Lucy as the heroine, as his main character? Innocent, brave.
Well, naive, probably.
And naive, too.
Yeah.
Very trusting.
Since she's the youngest of the siblings. And actually, does it say how old she is?
No, usually she's 5 or 6, they say.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, very little.
Yeah.
Yes, I should have put that out
In
there.
the movie, she seems more like 8, 9, 10-ish, a little bit. But
That's true.
yeah. I just wasn't sure if in the book they actually stated an age.
I should double check that. I've always assumed, but I don't remember a particular passage, so.
There's obviously magic involved.
Yes.
But so there's kind of a weird juxtaposition of magic mixed with Christian references, I guess. You don't see that usually.
Yes, right, yeah. And what were some things that reminded you of Advent in that part of the story?
Snow.
The snow.
Yes.
What else? You remember what she sees when she first comes out of the wardrobe in the distance?
A light.
What does that have to do with Advent? Let's talk a little bit about Advent. So, part of why I wanted to write this book was just, well, I'll say more about this in the sermon, but this book just seems so obviously about Advent to me. I mean, the snow, the Christmas packages, Father Christmas shows up later, and it's all about waiting, this waiting for Aslan to come. But there's also just something about Narnia that I realized reminded me of Advent, which is she walks through this wardrobe and she's in this whole different magical world. And I think that Advent is kind of like that too. And for our whole culture, not just Christian culture, we walk through Thanksgiving, the wardrobe of Thanksgiving, and all of a sudden, ready or not, the world changes around us. And everything is different this one time of year. So help me put up here some of the ways that Advent is a different world than the rest of our ordinary lives. What are things that we see, that we only see during Advent?
Christmas decorations.
Yep, decorations. Yes.
The Advent wreath.
Yes. What else?
Advent calendars.
Yeah. What else do you do around your house? Do you have things in your house that you like to put out for Advent?
Decorate. Trees.
Trees?
Think of decadent sweets.
Yeah. Special foods that we only, I wonder if your family has special foods that you only eat at Advent and Christmas time. Don't we have like a whole radio station that only plays Christmas music for like 6 weeks? Now, does anybody here listen to Christmas music in the off season? No, my husband does, but he's weird. So we have this music we only listen to and sing in church this one time of year. We don't sing Christmas carols other times of the year. Every once in a while, we sing an Easter song at other time of year. But Christmas, that weirds everybody out. Christmas music is for Christmas, right? Anybody hang lights up in their house? We have lots of lights, candles.
The Yule log.
The Yule log, yep. Anybody wear special clothes in the Christmas season besides priests? Sweaters? Do anybody have little jewelry that they wear that's different?
Lots of cleaning and polishing.
Yes, cleaning, polishing.
Movies.
Special movies, yep. Yeah, like every TV show has like a Christmas special, even like, Law and Order SVU, like something for Christmas, but
Family, like gatherings of
yes.
parties and things like that.
Seems like there's a lot of nostalgia.
Yes.
Lots of purple.
Yes, right.
That color of Advent.
Uh-huh. And even the red and green is technically Christmas, right? And I guess I'm kind of doing both here, but often we don't like to put red and green together other times, especially that certain shade, because that's Christmas. That stays here, right? So, and we could go on, right? They're all, I think the more we think about it, the more you might come across little things in your life that are particular to December. Or if maybe you start after Halloween, like some people, maybe November and December. But so often, right, after Christmas is over, the tree is out on the curb, and we go into January, and people are done. It's Christmas is done. Except for your one neighbor, right, who leaves everything up till March, right? Right. We all have that neighbor.
Yes, who that neighbor is.
Maybe that's you, right? So as Lucy walks through this wardrobe, and she's in this different place, what C.S. Lewis is offering to us is sort of this new sense of, I think, the beauty of creation and the beauty of what God has made and where God has set us. And I wonder if Advent gives us that every year, too. That we kind of had this special season, and we're lucky to live. We live in a country that has Christian culture. You know, if we lived in Israel, this wouldn't be the case. If we lived in Saudi Arabia, you know, but we live in a country where everybody puts out decorations and plays special music. I mean, people wear special clothes. You know, there's a whole feeling, and there's sort of this little sense of expectation that we all get in our stomachs too, right? That we kind of learn as children, like, Christmas is coming. Of course, if you're a parent, it might be like, oh, Christmas is coming! Right? Someone, the last time I did this, had me put stress up here for Advent. That's true, too. This sense of expectation. And that's what Lucy feels, isn't it, too, as she walks into this new place. A little fear, a little expectation. What is she going to run into? What choices is she going to make? I forgot my watch this morning. Would someone let me know what the time is?
9:30.
9:30. Okay.
9:25.
9:25. 9:30. Okay. I'm going to read to you a little bit now from When Edmund Meets the Witch, because right, we go into Advent and it's wonderful, but there are also lots of temptations and ways that we can go wrong and get distracted, right, from what the season is really trying to express to us. We can kind of go a little bit crazy. And, sorry, I lost my bookmark. I need to check my page. Okay, so Edmund is the little brother, and he finds his way into Narnia after Lucy one day, except instead of running into Mr. Tumnus, who, you know, actually turns out to be a very nice faun. He doesn't meet someone quite so nice. He runs into the White Witch, who is one of the people in costume that we have in the other room. And she also is not what she seems. If Mr. Tumnus seems a bit suspect at first, and especially in that movie, he just comes across as very creepy. Though Edmund is actually quite taken with this beautiful witch. So I think that's sort of a good lesson to us too about, you know, that for all that the devil is portrayed as this ugly person, I think actually the devil probably wears beautiful clothes if we were to embody him, right? He is very smooth. He's a very charming talker, right? People aren't usually horrified by the terrible things they do. Usually we have very good reasons for doing the things that we've done that we regret. So I just want you to think about sin and temptation and also emptiness, because you know the reason that Edmund is drawn to the witch is that he's kind of bullied a little bit by his older brothers and sisters. He kind of has this restlessness and these sort of troubled feelings about himself, and that's, I think, part of why the witch is able to get an in with him.
And we do have Turkish delight out here, right?
Yes, so you can try it. And that is homemade Turkish delight, so it is actually quite lovely in a way that store-bought Turkish delight is not.
So if you want to fall today, just follow me.
Turkish delight is kind of like a jelly sort of candy, often actually sprinkled with confectioner's sugar. This one isn't today, so it looks kind of like snowy stuff too. My poor child, the witch said, how cold you look. Come and sit with me here on the sledge, and I will put my mantle around you, and we will talk. Edmund did not like this arrangement at all, but he dared not disobey. He stepped onto the sledge and sat at her feet, and she put a fold of her fur mantle round him and tucked it well in. Perhaps something hot to drink, said the queen. Should you like that? Yes, please, your majesty, said Edmund, whose teeth were chattering. The queen took from somewhere among her wrappings a very small bottle, which looked as if it was made of copper. Then, holding out her arm, she let one drop fall from it onto the snow beside the sledge. Edmund saw the drop for a second in midair, shining like a diamond, but the moment it touched the snow, there was a hissing sound, and there stood a jeweled cup full of something that steamed. The dwarf immediately took this and handed it to Edmund with a bow and a smile, not a very nice smile. Edmund felt much better as he began to sip the hot drink. It was something he'd never tasted before, very sweet and foamy and creamy, and it warmed him right down to his toes. "What would you like best to eat?" asked the Queen. "Turkish delight, please, your Majesty," said Edmund. The Queen let another drop fall from her bottle on the snow, and instantly there appeared a round box tied with a green silk ribbon, which when opened turned out to contain several pounds of the best Turkish delight. Each piece was sweet and light to the very center, and Edmund had never tasted anything more delicious. He was quite warm now, and very comfortable. While he was eating, the Queen kept asking him questions. At first, Edmund tried to remember that it is rude to speak with one's mouth full, but he forgot about this and thought only of trying to shovel as much Turkish delight as he could, shovel down. And the more he ate, the more he wanted to eat. He never asked himself why the Queen should be so inquisitive. She got him to tell her that he had a brother and 2 sisters, and that one of his sisters had already been in Narnia and had met a faun there, and that no one except himself and his brother and sisters knew anything about Narnia. So what red flags do you notice about the Queen that Edmund does not?
She's just giving things away when she just met him, kind of. She's very, don't candy, yes, exactly. The early version.
Yes, the early version.
You know, one thing that I found interesting in the
Yes.
movie, because we're visually seeing everything, I mean, there's nothing that says she's the witch, but in the book, I noticed it went back and forth between what you were reading at first said
Yes.
the witch, and then later she said the queen, and I was wondering how they were going to,
Yeah.
if it was blatantly obvious that she's a witch, because as you said, she's, beautiful
Gorgeous.
figure and everything like that, and
Yes.
the reader probably needed a little hint there.
This is not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and in the beginning of the chapter, too, there are kind of a few little flags for the reader, too, that at first she's furious, and then she kind of composes herself. So a small child perhaps might not read those the way an adult would, but yeah. What else does she ask him about? Do you remember what she's so interested to hear about?
His family.
Yeah. And what does he tell her?
Gives away the secret that his sister's been here before.
And isn't it interesting? She also wants to know, does anybody else know you've been here? Yeah. Yeah. Actually, rereading this to you just now, that kind of, and having done some of the Keeping God's People Safe training, it kind of like makes all your hackles stand up in terms of dangerous adults. So I think sometimes we shy away from teaching children about sin, right? Because we don't want them to think they're terrible people, right? There'll be plenty of room for that when they become adults, right? We think about all the things we do badly. Oh, good, there's the Turkish delight. Wonderful, thank you, Bob.
I'm getting that, kids.
Not for me.
And it's funny, sin isn't often something that we think of as an Advent theme a lot of the time. But anybody remember the scriptures that we often hear during Advent? Who do we usually hear about in the gospel readings? Big hairy guy, hangs out by the river. John the Baptist. And is he sort of a friendly, cuddly kind of guy? Not really. He says, "Repent, you brood of vipers." So we hear a lot about sin in Advent. Sometimes we get a little reading. Usually the first Sunday is Apocalypse Sunday, right? Jesus foretells the end of the world, and so there are all these little sort of glimpses of destruction and sinfulness and evil, and that does not match the culture of Christmas that surrounds us. So I also think The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe can be a good companion for us because we get to journey with Edmund, who's this little boy who is kind of susceptible to the White Witch in a way his siblings are not. And I think we all have ways that we are like Edmund, that we're also susceptible to doing the wrong thing, especially when we're cold or tired or hungry, right? So part of my reflection book also sort of traces that line. So there's sort of this wonderful spiritual sense of wonder in the book. There's also this sense of when you do the wrong thing, or you're drawn to the wrong action, or perhaps are drawn to something beautiful that ends up being something that betrays you. I think Turkish Delight can stand in for all kinds of addictions too, right? And some addictions destroy our lives, and some just quietly follow us around, right? We all, I think, have our own little Turkish delights,
Cashews.
What was that?
Cashews.
Cashews, yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, sometimes I'm actually just a little disturbed by all the jokes I see on Facebook about having a glass of wine, like as a response to everything. Or once I went into a gift shop in a resort town, and I swear to you, half the stuff in that store was like jokes about alcohol, and it made me a little uncomfortable. And I will just say too, as a woman of a certain income bracket, I sometimes worry. And I like to have a glass of wine after work for sure, but you know what? It is sometimes something that I lean on a little bit, and I think it is something that I sometimes use to dull other things in my life that I'm feeling. So, and I don't think it's in a place where I should join a 12-step program at this point. And yet, we all have these little sort of mild addictions that we carry around with us. So what are some things, and it can be funny, because it is kind of funny, what are some things that perhaps you indulge in sometimes? Oh, coffee, yes.
Specifically,
Starbucks.
Definitely chocolate.
Chocolate. What else do you like to indulge in? Perhaps
TV.
more than
TV.
TV, yep.
Playing solitaire.
Oh, yeah.
Books.
Anyone carrying a smartphone?
Oh, yes. Plants vs. Zombies.
Yeah. Oh, my husband loves that. I think, a little retail therapy, right? Sometimes those online portals make that even a little too easy to get to. Media. I think even exercise can be this for us sometimes. And God forbid, right, religion. We don't want to turn our religion into something we turn to for solace only and not for strength, right? That we turn to only as something to numb us or be solid for us instead of something also to challenge us and to deepen us and to make us more ourselves instead of a place to kind of hide a little bit, right? I bet I'm running out of time. Is it?
You have all of 7 minutes.
All right.
So
I've read to you twice from Lewis, and I'm just going to read you a little bit from my book. And I'm going to read you a chapter about the older sister. I am an older sister. Susan is the older sister in this book, and so I have a special affinity for her. Each reflection of my book starts with a little scripture passage, and the chapters alternate between being about things in the book and things that are in the Advent scriptures that you'll hear each year. And I try and bring them together. So this is a reading from Baruch that we hear once every 3 years. This chapter is called The Fur Coats, so you'll see why I chose this passage. Take off the garment of your sorrow and affliction, O Jerusalem, and put on forever the beauty of the glory of God. Put on the robe of the righteousness that comes from God. Put on your head the diadem of the glory of the everlasting. As the Pevensie children walk through the wardrobe, they push past rows of fur coats before emerging outdoors in a cold and snowy forest. Susan, the responsible older sister, suggests they each put on a fur coat to keep warm in the Narnian winter weather. While her siblings sometimes criticize her for being bossy, Susan wants her family to prepare for whatever Narnia may bring before rushing out into the snow. Advent is a season of preparation. At home, you may be decorating, listening to special music, wrapping and baking. Your church may be lighting candles on an Advent wreath, rehearsing a pageant, or offering special programs or concerts. You may be hearing on Sunday scripture from prophets and Jesus and John the Baptist warning and reassuring people about the times to come and what they should do to prepare. Anticipation and preparation can be half the fun of an event or a trip, but preparation, especially at this time of year, can become an end in itself and overwhelm any fun with to-do lists and guilt and paranoia. For instance, should Susan also have looked for boots and hats? What about a map? Should the children have turned back and packed a lunch? At some point, we just have to let go of preparing and just step forward in faith. Our Christmas preparations can take over Advent and leave little room inside us to receive the Christ child. Susan shows us that what we need may already be in front of us, if we are aware enough to notice. The fur coats were there when they needed them. The children meet others along the way who guide them and feed them. That doesn't mean that the journey is easy or that they're never cold, wet, or hungry, but because they have one another and allow themselves to accept help from others, they have enough. In the same way throughout the Bible, God provides for God's people, sometimes even with fur coats. After Adam and Eve are banished from the Garden of Eden, God provides them with garments of skins for warmth and protection. While the Israelites in the wilderness probably would have preferred to eat cucumbers, wine, and beef, God provides them with manna, water, and pheasants. Prepare is a traditional command for the season of Advent. So are wait and listen and watch. Preparing to receive Christ into our hearts sometimes means that we prepare by doing less and not more. Are there any questions that you have that I can answer for you before we finish?
What drew you to study Narnia and write about it?
I think, it's a good question. I loved that book when I was younger. And as one clergy person parish, I'm just always scavenging for ideas for programs and themes. And this one had been following me around for a number of years at St. Benedict, actually, until I sort of thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this and see how it goes. So it was almost just sort of the Holy Spirit or serendipity that I thought, I'm going to try and make this work. So, yeah. If you have younger children in your life, there is a picture book version of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So that's out there on Amazon if you want to look for that. And these will be up here if you want to take a look. And there are the Disney movies, but actually more true to the book is this dated but wonderful cartoon version from the Children's Television Workshop in 1979. And you can still get this movie. It's actually almost it's almost like they're reading to you from the book. It's very charming, very lovely. I've actually watched it a few times. It's quite delightful. And slightly higher production values, the BBC did a version around 1990 that you can also get. It's a little less scary than the Disney version. Friends of mine who are parents say that sometimes they've noticed kids do get a little scared by the BBC version. So this one is out there too. So if you want to be, really obsessed and watch all of them, you can. I also, do you have the copies? You probably gave them to me.
I brought it
here.
When you wrote the first book, did you plan on writing all of them, or you just kind of people started talking to him and said, hey, this is a good book, let's keep going?
Yeah, he just wrote that one and thought he'd be done. And then he started sort of thinking a little bit more, and then he wrote Prince Caspian, which is the second book that he wrote. And I think then he wrote Dawn Treader, and I think then he really thought, okay, 3 and I'm going to stop, but then he ended up writing all 7 of them. And now actually he wrote them out of their own chronological order, right? So The Magician's Nephew is sort of the creation story of Narnia. And that should come first, but he actually wrote that it was in the second half of the books that he wrote, so, yeah.
Your book, is it appropriate for a group or is it more individual?
It can be both. So there are individual reflections to read daily through Advent. And I actually know some churches, they're just going to talk each week about the reflections. But in the back of the book, I also have a 4-part discussion series that you can use, actually with a copy of the movie if you want to. And that's more intentionally group focused. In the back, there's also something called Narnia Night, which is a way to sort of have a family night around the characters, sort of a more involved version of what you all are doing this morning with activities and stuff. And there's also a recipe that I came up with for Mrs. Beaver has this sticky marmalade roll that just sounds so wonderful. And so I sort of cobbled together something with crescent rolls, Pillsbury crescent rolls. That's super easy and kind of fun. So that's the
And Chef Al has the Turkish Delight.
He's made the Turkish Delight.
He left out the nuts so that we're not allergy people.
And, that's great. So thank you for coming this morning. Let's see, is there anything else I was supposed to make sure I told you?
Yeah.
So I have some copies of the book up here, or you can buy them from the cashier in the other room. They're $12. It's also online if you want a Kindle or a Nook version. Barnes & Noble carries it, Amazon. So
Is
thanks for
Amazon
coming.
back in stock?
No, but I think as soon as they're delivering them as you're on the wait list.
I mean, I actually got one from
Oh,
Amazon.
good. So it says online they're out of stock, but they're getting them like every 2 weeks, so they're sending it out as soon as they get them.
So it's selling out as quickly as it.
Which is a nice problem to have.
It's a great problem to have.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.